I think a lot of you know who I am, but a lot of you certainly don't know who I am. So as much as my friends know, I really don't talk about my career too much. I'll just bring you briefly up to speed. I was a football captain here a long time ago, and in my time here, I became the only unanimous All-American center in the school's history. And by virtue of my performance, I was afforded the chance to play in the NFL, which I did for 9 years. And I should point out probably that there are a couple of guys in the audience whose timelines and length of service were the same as mine. Chris Godfrey is sitting right over here. And most of you know Mike Golick, who's sitting right over here. Now, both Mike and Chris, I think, will agree with me that the NFL is kind of a nerve-wracking place to work sometimes, in fact, often. But I was drafted by the Atlanta Falcons, where I spent my whole career, in 1981. And my first year there, I was a backup for an all-pro center named Jeff Van Note. And Jeff didn't need my help to do anything on the field. So when each game came around, I wasn't tense, I was loose, I was enjoying myself. I was having a good time. You know, I'd go in for a few special teams plays, come back to the sidelines, joke around with the boys for a while, drink some Gatorade. And they pay me for this. And at that point, football was really fun. Then one day, you knew it was coming, Jeff Van Note got hurt, and I had to go in the game. No problem, I got this. All right, boys, let's go get him. Break the huddle, run up to the line of scrimmage, turn the laces around on the ball so I could snap it up. And then I looked up through my face mask, and I saw a guy whose name was Mean Joe Green. Football wasn't fun anymore. Now, I bring all that up for a serious point, and one that really disturbs me, and that is that I was 22 years old, and I asked for it. That's what I got. But at earlier and earlier ages, I think, children are obliged to cross that same nasty threshold where sports is no longer fun for them. And sometimes it's a lot worse. And often, all that happens to their very great detriment. I know there's conference goers here, and you've heard the message for the last 2 days, but for those of you who are not familiar with Play Like a Champion, they provide training to promote good behavior in sports, my words, and youth sports specifically. Now, you might think, since the topic is youth sports, that that training would be directed at children, and you would be wrong. The training is directed at coaches and at parents. And I think probably the only one in the room who doesn't know the reason for that is probably my 7-year-old grandson over here. Adults, I think, cause all the big problems in youth sports. And I think you'd struggle to find somebody to disagree with that. And everyone has a story they know about. I can make it first person. My brother Tim, he's back here somewhere, taking the pictures. He's a 79 graduate of Notre Dame and a cardiologist. But back in 1969, when I was in 6th grade and he was in 7th grade, we were first-time football players. Now that year, most of what we learned was how to put our helmets on and take them back off again. That's just the way it was. That is until the game, and at the end of the game, when the opposing coach decided that he was going to sucker punch our coach in the middle of the field. And our guy went down like a ton of bricks, and a virtual riot broke out. Coaches fighting coaches, parents fighting parents, players fighting parents or players. It was one of the most horrific experiences of my life. Now, to contrast that, you might think that all the good things that have happened to me in the meantime might wash all of those bad memories away. I mean, I had one occasion where the actor John Candy introduced me to a live audience of 40 million people. Pretty big memory. It's got nothing on the memory of what happened that day back in Huntington, New York, and 55 years ago, and I still carry it with me to this day. And I think of all the thousands and maybe even millions of people who have stories like it, or even worse. Mothers getting in fist fights. Just the most horrible things you can imagine. So, in deference to our hosts, Play Like a Champion, I really applaud their work because, again, in my words, they encourage adults to stop being participants in youth sports and to start being the leaders and the behavioral examples that their children really need. I think that to transition my talk a little bit and to make it a little more lighthearted, I think we really underestimate the effect we have on each other. We're very social beings. And I think we underestimate that the least little thing we do around each other can affect each other in a very profound and long-lasting way. And I'd like to transition my talk from youth sports to music to illustrate that. So if you'll bear with me a second. Is this thing working? Oh, I guess it is. Good work over there. Believe it or not, with my background, I'm best known in these parts as a musician and a composer. And it kind of has become a full circle thing for me because when I arrived at Notre Dame in 1976 on a football scholarship, I kind of felt like I was a better musician than I was a football player. Unfortunately, my coaches felt the same way, but. Now that's what Clair de Lune sounds like, Clair de Lune by Debussy. It's a beautiful piece. I'd like to show you, though, what Clair de Lune looks like on paper. Can we get that up, Britt? Look at that. Music is not your friend. No, sir. At least that's what I told myself when I was in 8th grade. I just finished 6 years of classical lessons. And, while it certainly had its moments, music was a sterile exercise of mathematics and dictation like this. And at that point, I was given the option of completely dropping it, which I had decided to do. That is until one day I heard a song on the radio that started changing my mind a little bit. Now, it wasn't the greatest song in the world, but there was something intriguing about it to me. It had a very raw piano part to it. And the more I heard of it, the more I decided I have to learn this piece of music. I just have to. Now, the great news, well, the good news, I guess, is that that had never happened to me before. I never wanted to learn a piece of music. It was always an assignment of some kind. And so for the first time, I was being proactive. And it was all because of a little inspiration that some artist put and had no idea who I was. So I was newly inspired to do something musical. Now the bad news was there was no sheet music for the song. And that was the only way I could play music, was with a very strict roadmap to show me each and every move to make. Now the great news was that I was obliged by my inspiration that came out of nowhere to learn music with a completely different method than reading. And that is, I had to learn to play by ear. And that little change made all the difference in my music career, as it were. Now, it may sound like an on and off switch to you, but going from reading music to playing it by ear, it can be a very painful transition. And I put my family through it with me, by the way. Because I listened to this song, and I worked on it for a week. Every miserable note, every line, I pulled the song apart, I put it back together again 100 times. But by the end of it, I had mastered the process. And that song might be familiar to you. From that point forward, I never really looked back. I never went back to, oh, thank you. Oh, that old thing? No. So I never went back to reading music again, and it was revelatory to me. I could listen to a song, and if I wanted to play it, I listened to it, and I played it. It was as simple as that. Every song that I learned increased my understanding of music. Instead of having to look at a page, all I had to do was look at the keyboard to find what I was looking for. And I started learning structure, syntax, dynamics, melody. And as it turned out, all these things were the building blocks of composition. So I took it to the next level. And with sort of a limited vocabulary at first, working out very simple tunes, I got complex in a pretty big hurry. And so I transitioned from playing other people's music to playing my own. If I needed a piece of music, I wrote a piece of music. This is a section of a Kyrie that I wrote for a project. I think that was from my blue period. But it was my life had completely changed. And again, trace it back to somebody who wrote a song at some point. Eventually, my path led me to the door of a guy named Jim Tullio, who was a Grammy Award-winning producer. And for my first 10 years out of the NFL, Jim and I built a tremendous body of work. We did recording projects, corporate videos, and we also did a lot of commercials. I've got a video up here for you of a few of those commercials that we did just for grins. The first one is we did for State Farm. We did a lot of national stuff for them. And Jim wanted a sort of a Celtic vibe for this particular spot. So while he went over and worked on the percussion section and mapping out the timing, I went over to the piano and I started messing around with some riffs that I thought would fit the mood. I had come about 1,000,000 miles from being that 8th grader that wanted to toss it all in to having music becoming one of the great bedrocks of my life. And I think I tell you all that, and referring back to my original statement, I can trace it all back to that song that inspired me, completely unintentional and inadvertent. And it goes to my original point that at the most unlikely times, the things we do around each other affect each other. And again, in deference to Play Like a Champion, that never happens more than in the case of an 8th grader or younger. So we need to be mindful of the things we do in front of our kids. One of the most, in fact, the most satisfying and gratifying parts of music for me has been in writing with Jim Tullio songs for the Notre Dame community. And we're about to do one for you right now. So I'm first going to introduce our musicians. I'd like to introduce you to John Williams. John has played on, I think, all our Notre Dame recordings, and I've done a lot of appearances with him here and elsewhere. But say hello to John Williams for me. The fiddle player is a 2010 graduate of Notre Dame. And this is the first time I've played with her. I've seen her on YouTube a ton of times, and I just had to have her here tonight. Say hi to Katie Grennan, please. I've done a lot of appearances with our singer as well. She's also a 2010 graduate of Notre Dame. And she's a felony prosecutor during the day. And she's my daughter in her part-time. So Britt Florin. I went out this morning for a real early morning walk like my wife and I always do. And I was walking in front of the dome, and all of a sudden I noticed that there wasn't a living soul around. And it was kind of an eerie feeling when I realized it. And it was kind of like the movie The Shining, you know, where they have this big resort and it's empty and it's kind of a horror show, but it's probably a bad comparison. But it's at those times you get a real sense of the multitudes that came before us, and you sort of feel their presence. And you also are reminded of why people come back to this campus year after year after year, both in body and in spirit. And so one of the songs Jim and I wrote was about the campus in Notre Dame. And this is called Our Lady of the Lake.
There's an old familiar trail down a worn and a weathered dream, where the heart will lead to home again, and a spirit evergreen. To a memory I awake, to a doorstep I will take. I will be received and be redeemed at Our Lady of the Lake. Our Lady of the Lake. Our Lady of the Lake. I will be received and be redeemed at Our Lady of the Lake. Our Lady of the Lake. Our Lady of the Lake. I will be received and be redeemed at Our Lady of the Lake. And every time I go, it's with the river flow. And as I face the night, she's a guiding light. To a memory I awake, to a doorstep I will take. I will be received and be redeemed at Our Lady of the Lake. Our Lady of the Lake.
I'm going to close it out for us tonight, so we not going to keep you here much longer. I'd first like to, Jack was mentioning Father Hesburgh, and I'd like to show you a quote of his speaking to a group of graduating seniors. Let us remember how good it felt when we were all here together, united by a good and decent feeling, which made us better people. Better probably than we otherwise ever would have been. That says a lot right there. That's a great synopsis. I'm very jealous because that's something I wish I would have written myself. So I'm going to summarize it with even more brevity and maybe a little less warmth. And that is this: your life is not about you. It's about the people around you. And you forget that to your own peril. That gets to me to thinking of the guy who won that Heisman Trophy over there, Leon Hart. I got to know Leon really well, actually, through my great friendship with Kevin Hart. And it was one of my favorite parts of having gone to Notre Dame. Leon, for those of you who are not familiar, he won the Heisman in 1949, so it was a long time ago. But boy, back then, he was bigger than life. He between his athletic ability and his massive size. He wasn't simply a man among boys. He was like Gulliver among the Lilliputians. And I'm not joking. He really was. At that point in my life, he was probably the most famous athlete I'd ever met. Notwithstanding the fact that I was one of the Lilliputians, I felt like he took me in, and he was not just friendly, but engaging and familiar with me. And the more I hung around with Kevin, the more I saw Leon, who was on campus often. So Leon probably knew that most of my career I actually struggled here at Notre Dame, my football career. I had injuries, competition, fighting for playing time. It was not a pleasant experience, at least at that point. And Leon never mentioned it. It just never came up in discussions. I was always welcome at dinner as long as he let me eat half his entree. Everything was fine. When I finally made it, his countenance towards me didn't change one bit. And in fact, he gave me some of the greatest and most informed advice I ever had. He said, and I'm paraphrasing, that fame is not the land of milk and honey. And it's your job now that you are where you are, to keep yourself independent of it and its trappings, and to focus on the important things in life. I can guarantee you that without the support of Leon's family and his community, that piece of metal wouldn't have been worth more than a boat anchor to him. And that's why Leon Hart was a champion to me. And that's basically the spirit of what Jack has talked about, and kind of the way it's sort of an unspoken ethos we have around here. That led me to, and leads me to here, write another song with Jim Tullio, and this one is about the people of Notre Dame and the spirit that animates them. This is called Here Come the Irish.
Well, I remember the leaves have fallen, and a far-off music like pipes a-calling, and I the golden morning, I saw the long ranks as they were forming, and there's a magic in the sound of their name. Here come the Irish of Notre Dame. The pilgrims follow by the sacred waters, and arm in arm go the sons and daughters. The And there's a magic in the sound of their name. Here come the Irish of Notre Dame. Here come the Irish of Notre Dame.
Thank you, folks, for coming tonight. We appreciate it. Please support Play Like a Champion.